The hum of the airplane was steady, almost hypnotic, as if the universe itself conspired to rock me into unconsciousness. I had been awake for nearly 2 days, juggling the graveyard shift at the diner and the early morning cleaning job that paid barely enough to keep the lights on. By the time I dragged myself through the airport and onto this flight, exhaustion had already won the war. I dropped into my narrow seat, clutching my worn backpack like it held the pieces of my soul. My eyelids burned from lack of sleep. People moved around me, suits with briefcases, couples holding hands, a family corralling 2 restless kids, but I felt invisible. No one cared about the poor girl alone on a cross-country flight. No one ever did, except the man beside me. When I first noticed him, it was only in fragments: the crisp cut of his dark suit, the glint of an expensive watch, the way his cologne seemed to coil through the air like smoke and cedarwood. He didn't belong in Coach, that much was obvious. Power clung to him like a second skin. I told myself not to stare, not to let curiosity show. Men like him didn't notice girls like me, but he turned his head, and suddenly his gaze was on me, dark, steady, assessing. My stomach twisted. There was nothing casual about the way he looked. It was as if he knew me, though I was certain we had never met. My instinct told me to look away, so I did, pressing my forehead against the cold airplane window, trying to disappear. The plane lifted, the cabin dimmed, and the hum grew louder. My exhaustion clawed its way back, heavier than fear. I shifted in my seat, the hard cushion unforgiving, and fought to stay awake. But the rhythm of the engines was relentless. My body betrayed me. I must have drifted, because the next thing I felt was warmth. My head had tipped sideways, and instead of the plastic armrest, it rested against something solid, something alive. I froze, realizing the impossible. I had fallen asleep on the stranger's shoulder. Heat rushed into my cheeks, embarrassment cutting through my fatigue like a blade. I tried to move away, to sit up straight, but his arm adjusted, subtle, deliberate, as though he allowed me there, as though I belonged there. My pulse jumped painfully against my ribs. I dared a glance upward. His face was calm, unreadable, eyes closed as if he too slept. But I knew better. I could feel the quiet tension in him, the restraint. He was letting me stay. My throat tightened, unsure if it was safety or danger I had stumbled into. For a moment, I thought of pulling away, of reclaiming the thin thread of distance between us. But my body was a traitor, seduced by warmth, by the rare sensation of being sheltered. My lashes fluttered closed again. Just for a second, I promised myself. Just 1 second. The second turned into silence. Silence into surrender. I never noticed the man behind us slip an envelope into the stranger's hand. I didn't see the nod, the silent exchange. I didn't hear the camera click twice as my sleeping face was captured against his shoulder. I was lost in exhaustion, in that stolen fragment of comfort. When the plane touched down hours later, I would remember nothing except the echo of his scent and the way my body had leaned into him as though it had known him forever. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his world. And I didn't know that my life had just been rewritten in ink too dark to erase.
She slept against my shoulder as if the world had granted me a gift I had already stolen. Her weight was light, fragile, but it anchored me more than any oath of blood ever had. I kept perfectly still, though every instinct in me ached to move, to claim, to bend her to the reality she didn't yet understand. Alice Belandi, the daughter no one was supposed to find, the lost heir of a dynasty thought dead, and now, mine. I studied the curve of her face, the faint smudge of exhaustion beneath her eyes, the way her lips parted slightly with each breath, innocence disguised as weakness. She believed herself invisible, unwanted. She had no idea the weight of her bloodline, or that every rival family in Italy would burn the world to control what she represented, and she had no idea that I had already. While she drifted in dreams, my men moved with precision. A woman who mirrored her frame and coloring stood before a chapel camera, veil hiding what details might break the illusion. Papers already prepared with a signature she had given unknowingly days earlier, signing what she thought was a mundane travel waiver. Witnesses, paid, loyal, false, would swear they saw her vow herself to me, all threads woven into an unbreakable knot. By the time she woke, the cage would be complete. She stirred, shifting closer, murmuring something too soft to decipher. I let my eyes close, pretending to rest, while my mind calculated the steps ahead. In Las Vegas, everything was for sale. Silence, lies, legality. A marriage certificate meant little in the eyes of the law, but in my world, perception was truth. Perception was power, and power was all that mattered. Not all, not anymore. I breathed in the scent of her cheap shampoo, faint vanilla, something uniquely her. It stirred something restless in me. An uninvited feeling, one that threatened to erode discipline. I had set this trap for strategy, for empire, for the war between families. But now, with her pressed against me, the thought of sharing her with anyone, even in theory, set my blood on fire. The Moretti would covet her, the Caruso would destroy her, and if either touched her, I would tear them apart bone by bone. The seatbelt light flickered on. The pilot announced our descent. Alice shifted again, lashes fluttering, but did not wait. I allowed myself a final glance, unguarded, before the mask returned, cold, commanding, untouchable. When she opened her eyes next, she would no longer be free. She would belong to me, not just in the ink of forged signatures or the whispers of false witnesses, but in reality. I would make it so. The Empire did not need her affection. It did not require her trust. But I already wanted both. And I was a man who never left a desire unclaimed.
The first thing I felt was the weight of velvet curtains shutting out the daylight. My body ached as though I had been dropped into someone else's life and left there. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The sheets beneath me were crisp, expensive, smelling faintly of smoke and leather. Nothing like the cheap detergent of the motels I sometimes worked in. I sat up sharply. This wasn't my bed. This wasn't even a place I could afford to walk past. Gold-veined marble gleamed on the walls, a chandelier shimmered overhead, and a chilled bottle of champagne waited on the table like a taunt. My breath hitched. Las Vegas. I remembered the flight, the stranger, his shoulder beneath my cheek, and then I saw it, a folder resting neatly on the bedside table, my name stamped across the top. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Photographs spilled out, me, in a white dress, veil covering most of my face, standing at an altar beside the man from the plane, Vincenzo. My pulse roared in my ears. I had no memory of this. None. The images looked real. Too real. Witnesses in the background, applauding. My signature inked on a certificate. My hand, but not. My handwriting, but distorted. No, I whispered, pushing the papers away as if they burned. This isn't possible. I wasn't there. The door opened. He walked in like he owned, not just the room, but the air I breathed. Dark suit, eyes sharper than knives, presence filling every corner. Vincenzo de Santis. My stranger, my husband? You're awake, he said smoothly, as if I were simply late to a dinner date. His voice was low, rich, dangerous. I was beginning to wonder if I'd have to kiss you to bring you back to me. I stumbled out of bed, clutching the sheet around me like armor. What is this? These photos? They're fake. I never stood in that chapel. I never said vows. I never signed anything. He took his time crossing the room, each step deliberate. You slept, yes, but you signed days ago. An agreement at the airport, remember? A harmless form, you thought. My men were witnesses. The rest was handled. He lifted the folder, tapped the forged certificate with 2 fingers. On paper, Alice Belandi, you are mine. I'm not. My voice cracked. My throat closed around the denial, but the documents lay like iron shackles between us. You tricked me. This is fraud. It means nothing. He tilted his head, studying me with unnerving calm. In your world, perhaps, but in mine, perception is truth. Every family, every rival, every ally will believe we are bound. That is what matters. I shook my head violently, panic flooding every nerve. You can't keep me here. I'll go to the police. The corner of his mouth curved, not into a smile, but into something sharper. And tell them what? That you fell asleep on a plane and woke up married? That you regret the choice your own signature confirms? You'll look unhinged, naive. No one will listen. No one will save you. Tears stung, hot and unwanted. I hated that he saw them, hated the power that flickered in his gaze at my weakness. He reached out, caught my chin between his fingers, tilting my face up until our eyes locked. You belong to me now, he murmured, voice velvet over steel. The sooner you accept it, the easier it will be. I jerked free, heart hammering, chest tight with fury. I will never belong to you. He let me go, stepping back as if he'd heard this declaration 1,000 times before. Yet his eyes lingered, dark fire smoldering. We'll see. In that moment, I realized the bars of my cage weren't steel. They were forged from lies, power, and the truth that no one in this city, or any city, would ever believe me. And worst of all, a part of me feared he was right.
Alice's fury was a thing of beauty, raw, unpolished, sparking like flint against steel. She stood in the middle of the suite clutching the sheet around her, trembling with rage and fear. But all I saw was the fire in her eyes, so fragile, yet unyielding, so breakable, yet unbroken, my perfect contradiction. I poured myself a glass of scotch, ignoring the tremor in her voice as she demanded explanations that no longer mattered. Everything had already been arranged. Everything signed, sealed, bound. "You think you can hold me here?" she spat, pacing like a caged animal. "This isn't real. None of it is real." I watched the amber swirl in the glass before taking a slow sip. Reality is perception, Karami, and perception is power. In my world, that makes it real, and her glare was ablaze. "I'll prove it. I'll expose you. Someone will—" "Someone?" I let the word heavy with Alice. Every witness was chosen. Every photograph captured. The signatures match. To them, you are Mrs. DeSantis. You belong to me, not because of ink or ritual, but because I decided it. She froze, knuckles white against the sheet. The silence between us sharpened. I crossed the room slowly, every step measured, my shadow stretching over hers until she had nowhere left to retreat. My hand brushed the wall beside her head, caging her without touching. Her breath came fast, uneven. She hated me, yet I could feel the pull, an invisible thread tightening, binding us closer with each heartbeat. "You tricked me," she whispered, voice breaking. "You had no right." I lowered my head until my lips were near her ear. "No right. I had every right. You are Belandi blood, the last daughter of a dynasty that refuses to die. Do you think the Moretti or Caruso would have offered you a choice? They would have used you like a pawn, discarded you when convenient. I, at least, protect what I claim." Her eyes widened at the name, confusion flickering across her face. Belandi. She didn't even recognize. That truth would cut deeper. "I'm not yours," she hissed, but her voice betrayed her. A tremor, soft but undeniable, ran through her body as my presence pressed closer. I smirked faintly. "Say what you like. Deny it as much as you want. But you leaned into me on that plane, Al. You sought my warmth before you even knew my name. Your body speaks truths your lips cannot." She shoved against my chest, breaking the cage, though I let her go. She stumbled back, clutching herself with both arms, eyes wild, hatred, fear, and beneath it, something she didn't yet understand, something I intended to cultivate until it consumed her. I downed the rest of the scotch and set the glass aside. "We leave for Italy tomorrow. There, you'll see the world that already considers you, and when you do, you'll understand. Your resistance changes nothing." Her breath caught. "I'll never forgive you for this." I met her gaze, steady and merciless, though inside something restless twisted in my chest. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Al. I'm asking for your surrender. I always get what I—" Her silence lingered like a challenge. I turned away before I did something reckless, before the temptation to claim her with more than words overcame the control I had built over a lifetime. Tomorrow, she would step into my kingdom, and whether she came screaming or silent, she would remain, because I had already chosen, and I feared nothing in this world, except losing her before she understood what that meant.
Sleep didn't come. Not in that gilded cage of a suite, not beneath the suffocating weight of forged documents stacked like evidence against me. I paced the carpet until my feet ached, mind clawing at every possibility. Escape, denial, someone to believe me. But every path led back to him, to Vincenzo, to the iron snare he had woven while I slept. Morning came sharp and cruel. Sunlight spilled across the room, but it didn't warm me. I dragged on yesterday's jeans and a wrinkled shirt, daring the luxury around me to choke. My reflection in the mirror looked foreign, pale skin, haunted eyes, hair tangled like storm wreckage. This was not a bride. This was a prisoner. When I opened the folder again, I studied the signatures. My name sprawled across the certificate, familiar loops and curves, but I knew I hadn't written it. My pulse pounded with panic and fury. Somewhere, somehow, he had stolen my hand, twisted it into betrayal. A copy, a forgery, a trap. I wanted to shred it, burn it, erase it. But even if I did, the truth would remain. The world already believed. The door opened. He stepped inside, perfectly composed. Black suit pressed, shirt collar undone just enough to reveal the barest hint of skin. Power poured off him with every movement. I hated that my body reacted. Heat creeping into my cheeks, breath catching. Hatred wasn't supposed to feel like this. "I want the truth," I snapped, gripping the certificate hard enough to wrinkle it. "This isn't legal. I never stood in that chapel. I never said vows. I never gave consent." He leaned against the wall, arms folded, gaze unreadable. And yet the papers say otherwise. The witnesses confirm it. Photographs immortalize it. Do you think anyone will question the word of Vincenzo DeSantis? "Then it's fraud," I hissed, "which means it can be undone. I'll fight you. In court, if I have to." A shadow of a smile curved his lips, slow and infuriating. In court? You think ink and robes will save you? Las Vegas bleeds for men like me. Judges drink my wine. Clerks sign what I hand them. You'd stand alone, screaming at ghosts. My chest tightened, fury burning bright enough to make me shake. I don't care what power you think you hold. I will not be your wife. He pushed off the wall and crossed the space between us, deliberate and slow, until the heat of him was impossible to ignore. He didn't touch me, not yet, but the air itself pressed me back. Say it again, he murmured. Tell me what you are not. My throat ached, words scraping raw. I'm not yours. Something flickered in his eyes. Dark amusement, maybe, or hunger. His hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from my face, a gesture so deceptively gentle that my knees threatened to betray me. No, he said softly, almost to himself. Not yet. I shoved his hand away, breath shattering, heart pounding like it wanted to tear free of my chest. The smirk returned, sharper now, as if he thrived on every ounce of resistance I threw at him. You'll see, Alice, he said, turning toward the door. By the time we reach Italy, you'll understand. You can fight, you can rage, but every thread leads back to me. You are already bound. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving me with the echo of his certainty. I gripped the false certificate until the paper bit into my palms, whispering to myself that he was wrong, that I would never bend. But deep inside, beneath the fury, a traitorous spark flickered, a memory of warmth on that flight, of his shoulder beneath my cheek, of a safety I had no right to crave. I crushed the thought before it could grow, telling myself I hated him, telling myself I would find a way out, even as a part of me already feared I wouldn't.
The suite was more than luxury, it was a stage. Every detail, from the silk curtains to the black marble floors, was designed to remind her of the gulf between her world and mine. She stood there, small but defiant, glaring at me as if sheer willpower could dissolve the chains I had wrapped around her. It almost made me laugh. Almost. Instead, I loosened my tie and poured 2 glasses of wine, setting one in front of her. She didn't touch it. Her fists stayed clenched at her sides, as though striking me might shatter the illusion of control. Drink, I said simply, lowering myself onto the leather sofa. It will steady your hands. I don't need anything from you. The venom in her tone cut sharper than she intended. She thought her rage would wound me. She didn't understand yet. I thrived on it. You need everything from me, I replied. Protection, shelter. Even the breath in your lungs is safer under my watch than anywhere. You just haven't accepted it. Her laugh was bitter. Protection? You mean captivity. You tricked me into this, Vincenzo. You forged everything. You stole my life. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, watching her with deliberate calm. I secured your life. There's a difference. Do you know what would happen if the Moretti knew who you were? Or the Caruso? You'd be dead before the ink dried on a ransom note. She flinched, though she tried to mask it. I caught the tremor in her shoulders, the crack in her armor. Fear was beginning to edge through the fury. Good. Fear kept people alive. I stood, closing the distance between us. She retreated one step, then another, until her back touched the wall. My hand rose, not to seize, but to trace the space beside her cheek, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from my skin. Her breath hitched, lashes fluttering. Defiance burned in her eyes, but her body betrayed her. You hate me, I murmured, my voice low enough to graze her skin. And yet, your pulse tells me something else. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. You're imagining. I smirked, leaning closer until her scent, vanilla, soft and unassuming, slid into my lung. No, I don't imagine. I take, I claim, I make real what others only dream. Her lips parted, whether in protest or in something far more dangerous, I couldn't tell. For a heartbeat, the air between us thickened, humming with possibility. My mouth hovered a breath from hers, not touching, but promising. Her eyes flashed wide, a war waged inside her, flee or fall. I pulled back first, not because I lacked the will, but because I wanted her to feel the absence, the ache of what didn't happen. Control was a game, and I always played to win. You will stay here tonight, I said, stepping away, reclaiming my glass. Sleep, rage, break things if you like. Tomorrow we fly to Italy. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out like weapons. You'll never own me. I turned my head slightly, meeting her gaze with the faintest smile. You already wear my name, Alice. The rest will come. I left her standing against the wall, breathless, trembling, eyes burning with hatred, and something else she would never admit. Not yet. The suite door clicked shut behind me, and I carried the echo of her heartbeat with me like a victory.
The jet descended over Naples like a blade cutting into the horizon. From the window, I saw the coastline spread in glittering fragments, the sea dark and endless. It should have been beautiful, but all I felt was the weight of chains tightening with every mile. Vincenzo hadn't spoken much during the flight. He worked, reading documents, issuing commands in Italian too fast for me to follow. His presence filled the cabin even in silence. I sat across from him, arms folded, forcing myself not to glance at him, not to think of how close he had been the night before, how his nearness had nearly swallowed me whole. When the plane touched down, a fleet of black cars waited. Men in suits moved like shadows, nodding to him with the kind of reverence that turned my stomach. I was escorted into the back seat beside him, pressed against leather and silence, while the city blurred past. No one looked at me twice. To them, I was already his. The gates appeared before I understood what was happening. Iron and gold, rising higher than I could see, opening to reveal a world hidden from outsiders. The DeSantis estate wasn't a home. It was a fortress. The driveway curved through gardens manicured to perfection, statues of marble, fountains spilling water into stone bowls as though this were paradise. But the guards at every corner told the truth. This was a kingdom, and I was its captive queen. The mansion itself loomed, a palace carved from pale stone, balconies draped in ivy, windows like watchful eyes. My chest tightened as we stopped at the front steps. I had never in my life been anywhere so opulent. For one dizzying second, the orphan in me, always hungry, always reaching, ached at the sight of such wealth. And then I remembered, none of it was mine. I was only a possession locked inside its walls. Inside, the air smelled of roses and polished wood. Chandeliers glittered overhead, the marble floors echoing beneath my hesitant steps. Servants bowed as Vincenzo passed, eyes lowered, lips sealed. When their gazes brushed mine, I saw curiosity, pity, fear. They knew who he was, and they believed who I was supposed to be. "This is your home now," Vincenzo said, his voice a velvet decree. "You'll have everything you need." I spun toward him, fury boiling. A gilded cage is still a cage. His mouth curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Better gilded than buried. I wanted to scream, to tear down the perfect walls, to run until my lungs gave out. But where would I go? Outside these gates, I was no one. Inside, I was trapped with a man whose power bent the world around him. My nails bit into my palms as I followed him deeper into the mansion. He showed me a bedroom more magnificent than any I had imagined. Velvet drapes, carved oak furniture, a balcony that overlooked the gardens, dresses hung in the closet, all my size, shoes, jewelry, even perfumes. The sight made bile rise in my throat. He had planned everything, down to the detail of what I would wear. He had studied me, calculated me, erased me. When the door closed behind him, I collapsed onto the edge of the bed, fighting tears that threatened to break through. The silence of the room was unbearable. I opened the balcony doors, desperate for air, staring out at the night sky. The stars shone sharp and cold. Beyond the gates, the world lived on, free, unreachable. Somewhere deep inside, I swore to myself I would not be broken. He could dress me in silk, surround me with riches, call me his wife, but I would never give him what he wanted. And yet, as the memory of his eyes on me returned, of his voice murmuring that I belonged to him, a traitorous shiver raced down my spine. I wrapped my arms around myself, whispering into the night, "I'll find a way out. I have to." But even as I said it, the iron gates of the DeSantis estate seemed to laugh, as if they already knew the truth, that no one escaped once Vincenzo had decided otherwise.
The council chamber smelled of cigars, old wine, and ambition. My capos were gathered around the long mahogany table, their voices low, their eyes sharp. They were men who had killed, men who had built empires from blood and silence. And every one of them watched me as I entered with Alice at my side. She hesitated in the doorway, her hand curling against her dress, shoulders stiff. She wasn't dressed like the poor girl from the airplane. Silk clung to her figure, chosen carefully by my staff. She looked like she belonged here, even if she didn't believe it yet. And I could feel the heat of their gazes following her, assessing her, coveting what was mine. I let the silence stretch. Power grows in silence. Then I placed a hand on her back and guided her forward, making it clear to all that she stood under my protection and my claim. "This is my wife," I said, voice steady as stone. "Alice DeSantis." A murmur rippled through. Some masks slipped. Surprise, suspicion, envy. They had heard whispers, but this was the confirmation. The DeSantis family now bound to something more ancient, more dangerous. Belandi. One of the older men, Carlo, leaned back in his chair, smoke curling from his cigar. "Married in Las Vegas, was it? Quick work, Vincenzo." His tone carried weight, curiosity laced with challenge. My jaw tightened, but I allowed myself a thin smile. The best decisions are made quickly, before anyone else has the chance to interfere. Alice stiffened at my side. I could sense her fighting the urge to speak, to protest. I slid my hand lower against her spine, warning her without words. Not now. Another capo, Rossi, raised his glass in mock salute. A lovely bride, though fragile. You'll need to guard her well. His gaze lingered on Alice too long. I felt the urge to break his hand but I kept my expression cold, unreadable. She is guarded? I said flatly. Anyone who doubts that is welcome to test it. The table went quiet. Rossi's smirk faded. Good. Alice shifted slightly, and I caught the quick flash of her eyes on me, resentful, but also wary. She was beginning to see the weight of this world, the danger that circled her like wolves. And though she hated my claim, she understood, at least in part, that without it, she wouldn't last a day. The meeting dragged on. Territories, shipments, debts collected and owed. I gave orders, settled disputes, and reminded every man in the room why I sat at the head of the table. Through it all, Alice remained silent, though her presence burned brighter than any agenda discussed. When it was over, I rose, pulling her. My wife and I will dine alone tonight, I announced. It wasn't a request. Chairs scraped back. Men muttered their farewells. Eyes followed us as we left, some respectful, others hostile, all calculating. The heavy doors closed behind us. Alice finally tore her arm free, spinning to face me, her whisper a blade. You paraded me in front of them like property. I looked down at her, letting the fire in my eyes show. Just enough. Not property. Proof. You are the difference between weakness and dominance in this war, and no one will ever forget whose side you stand on. She shook her head, eyes bright with fury, lips trembling with unshed words. For a moment, I wanted to kiss her there, to silence her rebellion with something she would never admit she craved. Instead, I stepped back, keeping control. You will learn, Alice, I said softly. In this world, perception is survival, and tonight, you survived. Her breath caught, defiance battling fear in her gaze. I turned away before I did something reckless, but the fire of her resistance lingered in, burning hotter than any victory declared at that table.
Dinner in the grand hall felt like theater. Long tables stretched beneath glittering chandeliers. Servants moved silently between courses, and every eye that wasn't fixed on Vincenzo seemed to find its way to me. I kept my chin high, though inside I felt small, an imposter draped in silk, sitting beside a man who had stolen my name. The air thickened when another guest arrived late. He walked in with the smooth grace of someone who knew the effect he carried. Matteo Moretti. I recognized the name before I recognized the man. His family had been whispered about during the council meeting, and now here he was, all charm and menace wrapped in a perfect smile. He approached the table with deliberate ease, his gaze flicking from Vincenzo to me. Signore De Santis, he greeted, voice polite but edged. Then his eyes settled on me, warm and steady. And this must be the new bride I've heard so much about. Heat rushed into my cheeks, unwanted. Alice, I said quickly, as though reclaiming some part of myself by speaking my name aloud. His smile widened. Alice. Beautiful name. He took my hand before I could pull back, bowing slightly as his lips brushed across my skin. It was old-fashioned, courteous, and calculated. His eyes never left mine, dark with amusement, as though he already knew Vincenzo's temper. Beside me, I felt Vincenzo stiffen. The temperature at the table seemed to drop, though his expression remained carved from stone. Only his hand, gripping his wine glass with dangerous force, betrayed the storm beneath. Matteo released me, finally turning to claim a seat across from us. Conversation resumed, though thinner now, brittle. I tried to focus on the food, delicate courses that tasted of nothing, but Matteo's gaze returned often, lingering too long. I could feel Vincenzo's fury radiating beside me, a silent warning that made the hair rise on my arms. At one point, Matteo leaned forward, speaking over the low hum of voices. It must be overwhelming stepping into this world so suddenly. If you ever need a friend, someone to help you navigate. His words trailed, deliberate, the implication sharp. My pulse stumbled. I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, Vincenzo's hand found my knee beneath the table. His grip was firm, possessive, silencing. I froze. Breath caught in my chest as he spoke for me. My wife requires nothing from anyone outside this family, he said smoothly, but there was steel beneath every syllable. She is well cared for. Matteo's smile returned, slow and infuriating. Of course, still, the offer stands. The rest of the dinner passed in brittle silence. I could barely taste the wine, my skin prickling with tension, caught between the charm of one man and the smoldering wrath of the other. When we finally rose from the table, Vincenzo guided me out with a hand on the small of my back, pressure sharp enough to remind me that I was on a leash. The door to the hall closed behind us. His grip tightened, spinning me to face him in the shadowed corridor. His eyes blazed, colder than ice, hotter than fire. "Do not look at him again," he said, voice low but vibrating with barely contained fury. I shoved at his chest, anger rising to meet his. "I didn't do anything. He was polite, that's all." "Polite?" Vincenzo hissed. "He touched you. He dared put his mouth on you. He will not do it again." His possessiveness struck a chord deep inside me, half fury, half something I refused to name. My pulse pounded, breath shallow. "You don't own me." His hand caught the back of my neck, pulling me closer until our foreheads nearly touched. His voice dropped, rough and ragged. "No, but I will. And men like Matteo will choke on the proof." The words should have terrified me. Maybe they did. But the heat in his eyes, the closeness of his body, it ignited something reckless inside me. I hated him. I hated this. And yet my lips trembled with the dangerous urge to close the gap. I tore myself free, breathless, glaring at him with every ounce of defiance I had left. "You're insane." He only smiled, a wolf baring teeth. "Only about you."
The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, gold leaf, and the hum of violin. Politicians, businessmen, and criminals disguised in elegance mingled as if they were no different. This was Naples, the heart of my empire, and tonight, every eye would be on us. Alice walked at my side, radiant in silk the color of hair swept into a crown of dark. She looked like though her expression betrayed the storm, but defiance clung to her fume. I could feel it with every step she took beside me. The moment we entered, the whispers. Some men stared with envy, others with hunger. My jaw tightened, but I let them look. It was the point. She was mine, and they would see it. Then he appeared, Matteo Moretti, cutting through the crowd with his easy smile and tailored suit. His bow to me was shallow, perfunctory, but when he turned to Alice, his charm sharpened to a "Signora De Santis," he greeted, extending a hand. "You look exquisite this evening. May I?" Before I could speak, before I could forbid it, Alice hesitated, and then placed her hand in his. Fury roared through me, silent but consuming, as Matteo led her onto the dance floor. They moved to the music, her steps careful, his confident. He leaned closer, whispering something that made her lips tighten, though she did not pull away. Around us, eyes watched, whispers spread. It was a performance, and Matteo knew it. Every turn of the dance was an insult carved into my pride. I let it last exactly long enough to be noticed. Then I crossed the floor, the crowd parting instinctively. The violins swelled, but the music dimmed beneath the thunder and blood. When I reached them, I didn't ask. I didn't speak. I seized Alice's hand, pulling her free from his grip, and in the same breath drew her against me. My mouth crashed onto hers, hard and merciless, in the center of the ballroom. Gasps rippled through the crowd, whispers sharpened into a storm. But all I cared about was the taste of her fire and fury, her lips stiff with resistance until they weren't. For a fraction of a second, she yielded. For a fraction of a second, I felt the truth of her pulse racing to match mine. When I finally pulled back, her cheeks burned crimson, eyes blazing with hatred and confusion. My thumb brushed her jaw, a silent claim, before I turned my gaze to Matteo. He stood frozen, smile gone, eyes narrowed with calculated rage. Good, let him choke on it. "Touch my wife again," I said, voice carrying enough for half the room to hear, "and you'll dance with bullets, not music." Matteo inclined his head, a mockery of respect. "Of course, Vincenzo. Forgive my enthusiasm." His tone dripped venom, but he stepped back, conceding the moment. I led Alice from the floor, her body rigid against mine. She hissed under her breath. "You humiliated me." "No," I corrected, voice low, teeth gritted. "I saved you. From him. From every man here who thinks they can take what's mine. They needed to see, and now they have." Her eyes glittered with unshed tears, fury spilling over. "I am not yours." I stopped in the shadow of the marble columns, turning her face toward mine, forcing her to look at me. "You are. Not because of papers, or photographs, or even vows. Because I decided it. Because I will protect you from everything, even yourself." She glared at me, trembling, torn between hatred and something else she would not admit. My grip softened slightly, a dangerous tenderness slipping past my armor. For a heartbeat, I wanted to kiss her again, not out of rage, but out of need, desire, possession. Instead, I released her, letting the absence sting. "Stay close to me, Al, or I swear, I'll burn this entire city to keep you in my sight." The music swelled again, and the world carried on around us. But for me, the night was already decided. The war had begun, and she was both my weapon and my weakness.
The ride back from the ballroom was suffocating. The car hummed quietly, city lights flashing across the tinted windows, but silence screamed louder than any words. Vincenzo sat beside me, hands resting calmly on his knees, as though he hadn't just humiliated me in front of an entire crowd, as though his lips hadn't crushed mine under chandeliers while the world watched. My hands trembled in my lap. Not from fear. At least, I told myself not from fear. Rage burned too brightly for fear. My skin still tingled from the force of his kiss, and that was what enraged me most. I should have hated every second, but a part of me had yielded. A part of me had wanted it. When we returned to the estate, I stormed past him, silk gowns swishing against marble floors. I didn't wait for him to follow, but of course he did, his presence like a shadow I could never shake. I reached my room, spun around, and faced him with all the fury in me. "You had no right!" I shouted, voice echoing off the gilded walls. "No right to drag me onto that floor, to put your mouth on mine in front of everyone like I was a trophy you'd won." His jaw tightened, but his eyes blazed with the same fire I felt. "No right? You think I would stand by while Matteo paraded you across that floor? He touched what is mine, Alice. He dared to use you to provoke me." I answered. "I am not yours," I screamed, chest heaving. "Do you hear me? I will never be yours." He closed the distance in 3 steps, fast, relentless, until my back hit the wall. His hands braced beside me, caging me in. His face hovered inches from mine, breath hot, voice low and rough. "Say it again. Look me in the eyes and say it while your heart pounds like this." My pulse betrayed me, thundering so loud I thought he could hear it. I hated him for being right, for knowing what my body gave away. My lips parted, trembling. "I hate you." His gaze dropped to my mouth, hunger burning through the fury. "Good," he whispered. "Hate me. Hate only me. As long as every thought, every breath, every fire in you belongs here." His chest pressed against mine, the heat of him dizzying. "I'll take it." My hands shot up, pushing hard against him, but he didn't move. Not until I shoved again, fists against his chest, fury spilling into tears. Then, finally, he stepped back, as if my defiance was the only thing strong enough to push him away. "You will not own me," I said, voice shaking but steady enough. "Not my mind, not my heart." His eyes softened, only slightly, a dangerous flicker of tenderness that unsettled me more than his rage. "You already live in my heart, Alice, whether you want to or not." The words struck deep, cutting past anger, past reason. I hated that they lingered. I hated that they made something inside me ache. He turned away before I could respond, fists clenched at his sides. "Sleep," he ordered, though his voice lacked its usual iron. "We'll speak no more of this tonight." When the door shut behind him, I slid to the floor, tears hot against my cheeks, chest still trembling from the storm he left behind. I pressed a hand to my lips, furious at myself for remembering the taste of him, for craving what I swore I despised. "I will not break," I whispered into the empty room, but the echo of his words haunted me. "You already live in my heart."
The study smelled of smoke and leather, the air heavy with the weight of violence waiting to be. Matteo stood across from me, hands tucked casually into his pockets, as though this were a social call, not a warning. His smile was infuriating, calm, polished, a mask designed to needle me further. "You put on quite a show tonight," he said, his voice smooth as silk, edged with steel. "Kissing your bride in front of everyone. Dramatic, even for you." My fingers curled against the desk, nails biting into polished wood. "You touched her," I said flatly. "That was your first mistake." His brows rose, feigned innocence lighting his eyes. "Touched?" I danced with her, courteously. "She's new to this world. Someone had to make her feel welcome." The lie beneath his civility burned through me. He hadn't wanted to welcome her. He had wanted to provoke me, to test the boundaries, to see how far he could push. And worse, Alice had let him, for a moment. My blood boiled at the memory. "You will keep your distance," I growled. "You will not speak to her, you will not look at her, and you will certainly not lay a hand on her again." Matteo tilted his head, amusement flickering across his features. "Ah, so it's true then. The great Vincenzo de Santis, untouchable, unshakable, finally has a weakness, a beautiful one." I moved before thought could intervene, crossing the room and seizing him by the collar. His back slammed against the wall, his smirk barely flinching as my forearm pressed into it. "Say it again," I hissed. "Say her name. I'll carve the word from your tongue." His laughter was hoarse against the pressure of my arm. "Careful, Vincenzo. If you kill me here in your own house, half this city will smell blood, and they'll know exactly why you spilled it. Over a woman." Rage clawed at me, demanding I snap his neck and be done with it. But logic forced its way through, cold and biting. He was right. Killing Matteo here would fracture alliances, spark a war before I was ready. Still, I leaned closer, voice a promise of what waited. If you ever breathe in her direction again, you won't live long enough to regret it. I shoved him back, releasing my grip, though every muscle screamed at me to finish it. He adjusted his jacket with infuriating composure, smoothing the fabric as though I hadn't nearly crushed his windpipe. Interesting, he murmured, eyes gleaming. You claim her so loudly, yet she looks at you like a prisoner looks at her captor. I wonder, does she burn for you, or does she dream of escape? My fist slammed into the desk beside me, wood splintering under the force. Leave. He inclined his head, mock respect dripping from the gesture. As you will. But remember, Vincenzo, possession is not the same as devotion, and devotion is much harder to steal. He left without haste, his footsteps echoing through the hall, leaving behind the stench of challenge. Alone, I dragged a hand through my hair, chest heaving. The truth he hinted at dug beneath my skin. Alice's eyes did burn when they looked at me, but with anger, with defiance. Not yet with a fire I craved, not yet with the devotion that would bind her as surely as any forged vow. I leaned against the desk, the image of her face rising unbidden, eyes wet with fury, lips trembling with the words she swore she would never say. My weakness, my obsession, my undoing. I had never feared a man, but Matteo was right about one thing. She was the only thing that could destroy me, and I would burn the world before letting that happen.
The night air was sharp with salt and smoke as I crept through the corridors of the estate, heart hammering against my ribs. I had waited until silence blanketed the halls, until the guards rotated their shifts, until I thought I could slip unseen into the world beyond the gates. My chance, my only chance. Every step was a war against fear. If they caught me, Vincenzo's wrath would be merciless, but the thought of staying, of suffocating in silk gowns and marble prisons, drove me forward. I pressed myself against cold stone, edging past dimly lit windows, toward the side entrance I had memorized. My hands shook as I fumbled with the latch, praying the night would grant me mercy. Then a voice cut through the dark. Leaving so soon? I froze, breath trapped in my chest. Matteo stepped from the shadows, smile gleaming in the faint moonlight. His suit jacket was undone, his tie loosened, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp. My throat closed around the words. I need to get out. Just for a while. He tilted his head, as though considering the plea. Out? From Vincenzo's golden palace? Dangerous move. I swallowed hard. I can't breathe here. He forged everything, trapped me. You saw it. You know this isn't real. Matteo's smile deepened, though it held no kindness. Oh, I know. And I also know how to undo it. Papers can be burned, witnesses silenced, freedom can be bought, if you choose the right buyer. My skin prickled. What do you mean? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Come with me, Alice. I can take you away from here. Away from him. You don't belong to Vincenzo. You could belong somewhere else. Belong. The word scraped raw against me. For a flicker of a moment, hope flared. Maybe this was the escape I'd prayed for. But then I saw the hunger in his eyes, not the protective fury I hated in Vincenzo, but something colder, greedier. Not desire for me, but desire to possess what Vincenzo valued. To use me like a weapon. You don't care about me, I whispered. You just want to hurt him. His smirk widened, unashamed. Does it matter? You want freedom. I want to ruin him. Our goals align. My chest constricted. The bars of one cage traded for another. No matter where I turned, I was someone's pawn. I'll find my own way, I said, forcing strength into words that trembled. I stepped back, clutching the doorframe behind me. Matteo's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. His voice dropped, velvet over venom. Don't be foolish, Alice. He'll destroy you. I'll at least let you live while I take everything else. I yanked free, heart racing. I'd rather take my chances with him than be your prize. For a moment, his mask slipped, eyes narrowing, jaw tightening. Then he chuckled low, a sound that sent chills down my spine. Brave girl. I wonder how long that bravery lasts. He stepped back into the shadows, vanishing as quickly as he'd appeared, leaving me shaken and breathless. My knees threatened to give, but I forced myself upright. Escape wasn't safety. Matteo had proven that. The world outside Vincenzo's cage was just another trap, waiting with sharper teeth. I closed the latch, retreating into the gilded prison I thought I hated. My heart twisted in confusion. I wanted freedom, but Matteo's touch had repulsed me more than Vincenzo's fury ever had. Back in my room, I collapsed against the door, tears burning hot. Maybe I was doomed either way. Maybe there was no escape. But one truth gnawed at me, relentless. If I had to choose between cages, I would rather fight the devil I already knew.
The sound of the latch echoed down the corridor, faint but telling. I had been in my office when the report reached me. A guard had seen movement near the side entrance. Too careful, too deliberate to be coincidence. My blood went cold, then hot. Alice. I found her outside her chamber, breathless, eyes wide as if she'd seen a ghost. She froze when she spotted me, and in that instant I knew. She had tried to run. Rage surged through me, sharp and poisonous. Not at the attempt, but at the thought of her out there, unguarded, vulnerable, within reach of wolves like Mateo. My chest ached with the thought of her slipping from my grasp, falling into their hands. The fury wasn't just possessive, it was primal. I closed the distance in a stride, seizing her wrist before she could retreat. "You tried to leave," I said, voice low and not a question, a verdict. She yanked against my grip, fire sparking in her eyes. "I will not be your prisoner." I had to try. I dragged her back, pressing her against the stone wall. My palm braced beside her head, my body caging hers, close enough to feel the hammer of her heartbeat. "Do you have any idea what would have happened if you made it past those gates? The Moretti, the Caruso, they'd tear you apart piece by piece just to hurt me. Is that what you want?" "I want my life back," she shouted, voice cracking, eyes bright with tears. "I want to breathe without your shadow suffocating me. I want to be free." Her words sliced deeper than she knew. For a moment I almost faltered, almost. But then I saw Mateo in her defiance, heard his name in her resistance, and my fury returned like fire to dry timber. "You spoke to him," I growled, every muscle taut. "Did you think I wouldn't know? Did you think Mateo offers salvation? He would use you, discard you, and laugh while I bled. He doesn't want you. He wants to destroy me, and you nearly handed him the blade." Her lips trembled, but her chin lifted, proud even in fear. "Better him than you." The words ignited something feral in me. My hand caught her jaw, tilting her face up, forcing her to meet my gaze. "Lies," I hissed. "You can spit them all night, but your body betrays you. Even now." Her breath stuttered, chest rising fast against mine. I leaned closer, so close I could taste the defiance trembling on her lips. "Tell me you don't feel it, Alice. Tell me your pulse doesn't race when I touch you. Tell me you don't burn with the same fire that's devouring." She glared at me, eyes glassy, lips parted. For a heartbeat, I thought she would deny it. Then she shoved me, fists against my chest, striking not to wound, but to survive the storm inside her. Her cry tore from her throat, half sob, half scream. I caught her wrists, pinning them against the wall, holding her still as I lowered my forehead to hers. My voice was ragged, stripped bare. "Hate me, curse me, but don't you dare give yourself to him. You're mine, Alice, even if it kills us both." For a long, breathless moment, we stayed locked there, her trembling against me drowning in the fury and need I couldn't contain. Her scent, her fire, her tears, they undid me more than any blade ever could. Then I released her, stepping back as if tearing flesh from bone. My chest heaved, control hanging by a thread. "Go ahead and dream of escape," I muttered, voice hoarse. "But understand this. You'll never run far enough." I turned and left before I broke entirely, before the temptation to claim her, in ways words couldn't cross the line between fury and madness. Behind me, her silence followed, heavy and trembling, and I knew that tonight, though she hated me more than ever, she also understood one brutal truth. I would burn the world to keep her from slipping away.
It happened fast. Too fast. One moment I was pacing my chamber, nerves raw from Vincenzo's fury. The next, the glass doors shattered inward, masked men storming through the balcony like shadows with knives. My scream tore out before a gloved hand clamped over my mouth, dragging me back. The taste of leather and smoke filled my lungs as I fought, clawing at the arm pinning me. "Quiet," one of them hissed in accented Italian, his voice low and cruel. "Or we break you before we deliver you." My heart thundered, terror flooding every vein. I kicked, writhed, but they were too strong. Rope bit into my wrists as they bound me, dragging me toward the balcony. The night air was sharp with gunpowder. Someone had silenced the guards. My breath came in ragged sobs as the reality sank in. This wasn't a nightmare. It was real. And Vincenzo wasn't here. The men shoved me into the back of a waiting van. My dress snagged on the doorframe, silk tearing, but they didn't care. The engine roared, tires screeching as we sped into the night. My body slammed against the cold metal floor, wrists burning against the ropes. "Why are you doing this?" I choked out, voice breaking. "What do you want from me?" The one who seemed to lead them turned, mask pulled low enough to reveal a grin that made my blood run cold. "You," Your leverage. Caruso will pay dearly to see DeSantis crawl. The name sliced through me. Caruso. Rivals. Enemies. I was no longer a pawn in Vincenzo's game. I was a weapon in theirs. Fear clawed at my chest. For all his lies, for all his manipulations, Vincenzo had kept me safe. Here, I was nothing but prey. Every time the van hit a bump, every laugh from the men, I felt closer to shattering. Hours blurred, the van finally halting in what felt like an abandoned warehouse. They dragged me inside, tossing me into a chair, ropes cutting deeper into my skin as they bound me again. The air smelled of rust and mold, shadows thick and endless. Then the door creaked open. Matteo stepped inside. My stomach dropped. He wasn't masked. He didn't need to be. "Hello, Alice," he said smoothly, as if greeting an old friend. "You look frightened." "Don't be. You're safe now." "Safe?" My voice cracked with fury and terror. "You're with them." He crouched in front of me, eyes gleaming with amusement. "I warned you. Vincenzo doesn't deserve you. With me, you'll have freedom." His fingers brushed a strand of hair from my face, mock gentle. "But first, he has to bleed." Tears burned my eyes as I jerked my head away. "You don't care about me. You just want to use me to destroy him." His smile curved sharper. "Perhaps. But if you're clever, you can survive this. Align with me, Alice. Be the reason Vincenzo falls, and I'll make sure you live to see it." Revulsion twisted in my gut. Even now, part of me longed for Vincenzo's fury, his suffocating presence, his unbreakable claim, because at least with him, I hadn't felt like this. Like meat, tossed to wolves. I lifted my chin despite the tears. "I would rather die than betray him to you." For the first time, Matteo's smile faltered. His eyes darkened, sharp with irritation. He rose slowly, pacing around me, voice dropping to a hiss. "Careful, Bella. Vincenzo may have chained you, but I can break you." Fear shook me, but I held his gaze, refusing to let him see me collapse. Inside, though, I was unraveling. The ropes cut deeper, the shadows closed in, and all I could cling to was one desperate hope, that Vincenzo would come, that he would find me, that this wasn't the end, because if it was, I would never have the chance to decide whether to hate him forever, or to admit the dangerous truth clawing at my heart.
The call came just past mid. My guard, breathless, words clipped with panic. "They have her." I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. Caruso. The name alone was enough to turn my blood into fire. Matteo's scent was in this too. I could feel it in my bones. He had dared. Rage sharpened every step as I armed myself. Gun, blade, enough ammunition to end an army. My men scrambled to follow, but I didn't wait for orders. This wasn't a mission. It was war. And Alice was the only prize worth fighting for. The warehouse loomed against the harbor, broken windows glowing with faint light. Guards lingered outside, cigarettes glowing red in the dark. They never saw me coming. The first fell with a blade across his throat, the second with a bullet through his skull. Silent, efficient, rage controlled by precision. Inside, the stench of rust and gasoline. Voices echoed. I followed them until I saw her, tied to a chair, wrists raw, tears streaking her face but eyes defiant. My wife, my weakness, my salvation. And Matteo, standing over her. "Last chance, Alice," he was saying, his hand stroking the air near her cheek. "Choose me, and you live. Defy me, and I'll leave you in pieces for him to find." I moved before he could touch her. My gun roared once, twice. Caruso men dropped where they stood. Chaos erupted. Shouts, gunfire, bodies falling. Alice's scream cut through it all, raw and terrified. Matteo spun toward me, fury twisting his features. "Vincenzo!" I fired. The bullet grazed his shoulder, spinning him back. He cursed, retreating into the shadows as his men dragged him away. Coward. Another time, I promised myself. Another time, I'd end him. I cut down the last of the Caruso soldiers before they could reach her. Blood sprayed across the concrete, painting the walls with proof of my wrath. When the final body hit the floor, silence swallowed the room, broken only by Alice's ragged breaths. I dropped the gun and crossed to her, ripping the ropes from her wrists. The moment her hands were free, she collapsed against me, trembling, sobs tearing from her throat. My arms wrapped around her instinctively, fiercely, pulling her into the safety of my chest. "It's over," I whispered, my voice raw. "You're safe now. I've got you." She shook her head, words fractured by tears. I thought you wouldn't come. I silenced her with a hand at her cheek, forcing her to meet my gaze. "Never. Do you understand me? Never. I would tear this city apart stone by stone before I let them keep you." Her eyes searched mine, wide and shining with something more than fear, something that unraveled me. I didn't wait. I couldn't. I crushed my mouth against hers, desperate, devouring, pouring every ounce of rage, terror, and need into the kiss. She stiffened for a heartbeat, then melted, arms clinging to me as if she believed it at last, that I was her only shelter in this world. The taste of her was salt and fire, tears and defiance, life itself. The kiss wasn't gentle, it was brutal, messy, alive. It was survival. When I pulled back, her lips were swollen, her breath unsteady, her forehead resting against mine. "You're insane," she whispered, voice trembling. "You'll get yourself killed." "Then I'll die with your name on my lips," I said, fierce and certain. "But as long as I breathe, no one will take you from me." I gathered her into my arms, carrying her out of that hell, stepping over the corpses of men who had dared touch what was mine. My men cleared the path ahead, but I barely saw them. All I saw was Alice, her face buried against me, her tears soaking into my shirt. I had feared nothing in my life, until her, and tonight proved the truth. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of living in a world without her.
The ride back to the estate was a blur. My body shook with every jolt of the car, but it wasn't fear alone that trembled through me. It was the memory of Vincenzo's kiss, fierce and desperate, pressed against my lips in the middle of blood and chaos. I hated myself for clinging to him, for letting him be the only thing that felt solid in that nightmare. By the time we returned, dawn was breaking. The sky glowed faint pink above the mansion's walls, mocking me with its serenity. Guards whispered as Vincenzo carried me inside, their eyes wide at the sight of their boss with a woman cradled in his arms. I should have felt ashamed, or weak. Instead, I only felt hollow. He didn't let me go until we were inside his study, the heavy door closing behind us with a final thud. He set me down gently, as though I might shatter if he released me too fast. His eyes lingered on my wrists, raw and red from the ropes, and his jaw clenched with fury. "I should have killed him," he growled, pacing like a caged beast. "Matteo, Caruso, every last one of them. I should have ended it tonight." I sat stiffly in the chair, exhaustion dragging at my limbs, but the fire inside me wouldn't let me rest. "You didn't," I said softly, "because you wanted me back more than you wanted revenge." His head snapped toward me, eyes burning. "Yes, because nothing matters more than you." The words twisted inside me, sharp with contradiction. Part of me longed to believe them. The other part remembered the lies, the forged papers, the stolen vows. My chest tightened. "Why?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "Why me? Why trap me in this life when I never asked for it?" He stopped pacing. Silence hung between us like smoke, heavy and suffocating. Then he stepped closer, expression stripped of masks, voice low and raw. "Because you're not just anyone, Alice. You are Belandi blood, the last daughter of Salvatore Belandi. Do you understand? You were born into this world whether you wanted it or not. And I needed you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Belandi. The name he had whispered before. The one I hadn't understood. My father. A ghost I had never known. The truth hit like a blade. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew all along who I was. That's why you sat beside me on that plane. That's why you did this." "Yes," he admitted without hesitation. "I orchestrated everything. The flight, the witnesses, the signatures. I built a web so tight you could never slip free, because if I didn't claim you, someone else would. And I couldn't allow that." Tears blurred my vision. My voice cracked with betrayal. "You stole my life." He dropped to one knee in front of me, his hand trembling as he reached for mine. "I saved it. You think I don't know what I did? You think I don't know it was cruel? But I would rather chain you to me than bury you because of them. I can live with your hatred, Alice. I cannot live with your absence." I ripped my hand from his grasp, heart splitting open. "You don't love me. You love control. You love winning. I was just another conquest." His eyes flared, and for once, there was no arrogance, no smirk, only raw, broken truth. "No, you're the only thing I've ever feared losing. That is not conquest. That is devotion." The room spun. My breath came shallow, uneven. I wanted to scream, to strike him, to collapse into his arms. Every instinct pulled me in two directions, ripping me apart. Hatred and longing, fury and need. I staggered to my feet, tears falling freely now. "I can't forgive you," I whispered. "Not for this. Not now." He didn't rise, only knelt there, watching me as though I were both salvation and executioner. "Then hate me, but stay. That's all I ask." I turned away before he could see the war raging in my eyes, before he could see how much of me already belonged to him despite everything, because the truth terrified me more than his lies ever could. Part of me didn't want to run anymore.
For days I had commanded men, brokered power, stared death in the face without flinching. But standing in front of Alice now, watching her recoil from me with tears burning down her cheeks, I felt something I had never allowed myself to feel. Fear, not of enemies, not of war. Fear of her walking away from me, even if only in her heart. She had turned from me in the study, trembling, refusing my touch. I let her go then, because if I forced her again, I would lose more than her body. I would lose the fragile thread of connection I was still fighting to weave. Now I stood in the shadows of my own chamber, staring at the city lights spilling across Naples, knowing she was only a wall away. My empire had never felt so hollow. I didn't notice her until she appeared in the doorway, barefoot, wrapped in silk, her face pale but steady. She didn't speak, and for a moment, neither did I. The silence between us was heavier than gunfire. Finally, I exhaled. I've built my life on fearlessness. Every man who ever crossed me knew I would face him without hesitation. I've looked down the barrel of guns, bled on these streets, buried people I loved. Nothing has ever broken me. I turned, meeting her gaze, letting her see the raw edge beneath the steel. Until you. Her eyes widened, suspicion and longing colliding. Don't say that, she whispered. Don't twist this into something it isn't. I'm not twisting anything. I stepped closer, slow, deliberate, as though approaching a wild animal that might bolt. I orchestrated every step of this because I knew once the world saw you, they'd hunt you. And because, my voice faltered, unsteady for the first time in years, because I wanted you, needed you, and that terrified me more than every enemy I've ever faced. Her breath caught, but she didn't move. Her arms folded tightly around herself, as if holding her body together against my confession. You don't need me. You need control. You need to win. I shook my head, a humorless laugh slipping out. If this were about control, I would have broken you by. You'd be silent, obedient, hollow, because I don't want silence. I want you, all of you, your rage, your fire, your defiance. I would rather burn with your hatred than live without your presence. Her lips parted, trembling with unshed words. For once, she didn't argue. She only stared at me as though she saw the monster stripped bare, a man drowning beneath his own obsession. I closed the final step between us, stopping just short of touching her. My voice dropped, hoarse and jagged. I fear nothing in this world. Not death, not war, not betrayal. The thought of losing you, Alice, it unmans me. It is the only thing that keeps me awake at night. Silence pressed in, broken only by her breath and mine. Her eyes glistened, a storm I couldn't read. She raised a hand slightly, as if to touch me, then drew it back, clutching her own wrist instead. The rejection cut, but the hesitation gave me something dangerous. Hope. Vincenzo, she whispered, voice thin with conflict. I don't know what to do with this, with you. I let out a slow breath, lowering my head until my forehead nearly brushed hers. I didn't kiss her. I didn't dare. Then don't decide yet. Hate me, fight me, curse me, but stay. That's all I ask. Her tears spilled silently, and she turned away, slipping back into the shadows of the corridor without another word. The echo of her steps carved into me like wounds. I stood alone, fists clenched, heart raw. For the first time in my life, I realized the truth. I had built an empire that could withstand armies, but one woman, this woman, held the power to destroy me without lifting a finger.
I couldn't sleep. Not after his words. Not after the raw confession that shattered the armor he always wore. I fear nothing in this world, except losing you. They echoed in me long after I left his chamber, threading through every heartbeat, every ragged breath. For days I had told myself my hatred was enough, that it was armor, a shield, a weapon. But hatred didn't explain why my body betrayed me whenever he was near. It didn't explain why the memory of his lips in that warehouse still burned against mine, why my pulse leapt at the sound of his voice, why part of me longed to believe him. By the time the moon was high, silence suffocating the halls, I knew I couldn't hide from the truth anymore. My feet carried me to his chamber before I could change my mind. My hand trembled on the handle, but I pushed it open. He was awake. Of course he was. He stood by the window, shoulders tense, glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. His eyes lifted when he heard me, and something in them softened instantly, dangerously. Alice. My name in his mouth was not a command this time. It was a prayer. I closed the door behind me, pressing my back to it as though sealing us into a world of our own. I can't keep fighting like this, I whispered. My voice broke, but I didn't care. I can't breathe with this war between us. He set the glass aside and moved toward me, slow, wary, as though he feared I might vanish. Tell me what you want, he murmured, his voice rough, and I'll give it to you. Anything. Tears blurred my eyes. I want... My chest ached, my throat tight. The truth clawed free. I want to stop pretending I don't feel this. His breath caught, sharp and audible. In the next heartbeat, he was in front of me, his hand cupping my cheek, thumb brushing away a tear. "Say it again," he demanded softly, desperately. "Say it, Alice." I met his gaze, no longer hiding. "I want you." The words ignited him. His mouth crashed onto mine, not with the violence of possession, but with the urgency of a man who had been starving for too long. I melted into him, my fingers tangling in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing him as much as he needed me. The kiss devoured, consumed, healed. He lifted me into his arms as if I weighed nothing, carrying me to the bed without breaking the kiss. The world outside, the enemies, the lies, the betrayals, ceased to exist. There was only us, only this fire that had burned through resistance, through hatred, through fear, until nothing remained but surrender. When his lips trailed to my throat, when his hands traced my skin with reverence and hunger, I didn't resist. For the first time, there was no war inside me, only a single truth. I wanted this. Him. Us. Not because he demanded it, not because he forced it, but because I chose it. Mine. He whispered against my skin, voice ragged, almost broken. "Yes," I breathed, the word escaping like a vow. "Yours." The night blurred into heat and fire, into the kind of intimacy that bound deeper than any forged signature. Every kiss, every touch, every shiver carved away the walls I had built, until I was laid bare in his arms. I hated that it felt like coming home. I hated that I didn't hate it at all. When it was over, I lay against his chest, our breaths tangled, my heart racing with something I couldn't deny anymore. His hand traced lazy circles against my back, his lips pressing into my hair as though he had no intention of letting me go. And for once, I didn't want him to. I should have been terrified of what it meant. Instead, all I felt was the ache of inevitability. Somewhere between fury and fire, I had fallen, and there was no escape left in me.
The night reeked of smoke and gunpowder. Naples burned in fragments as alliances cracked and blood debts came due. The Moretti had made their move, emboldened by Caruso's desperation, and at the center of it all stood Matteo, smiling like the serpent he was, waiting for me in the courtyard of my own estate. He had chosen the stage well. My men fought his outside the gates, but here it was only us, him and Alice, standing frozen at the top of the marble steps, eyes wide with fear and fury. He had dared to bring the war to her door. "Vincenzo," Matteo drawled, his voice carrying across the night. "I wondered how long it would take you to step out from behind your fortress. Tell me, does your little bride know how much of this is her fault?" I raised my gun, my teeth bared. "Say her name again and I'll cut your tongue from your mouth." He laughed, low and venomous. "She looks at me differently than she does you. She sees a way out. She sees freedom." I moved before he could finish, fury detonating in every muscle. We collided in the center of the courtyard, steel flashing as his blade met mine. The clash rang out sharp as thunder, sparks flying in the dark. Every strike was meant to kill, every step driven by years of rivalry sharpened into obsession. But I wasn't fighting for territory. I wasn't fighting for pride. I was fighting for her. Matteo lunged, the blade grazing my ribs, hot pain blooming. I didn't falter. I shoved him back, fists driving into his jaw, blood spraying as he staggered. My vision tunneled red. All I could see was Alice at the top of those stairs, trembling, watching, mine to protect. I caught Matteo by the throat, slamming him against the stone wall. My blade pressed into his chest, the point just above his heart. His laughter was ragged, broken by blood, but it didn't stop. "Go on," he choked. "Kill me. Show her what kind of man you really are. A butcher, a monster. The same as me." Behind me, I heard Alice cry out, her voice sharp, terrified. "Vincenzo, don't!" The sound cut deeper than Matteo's blade ever could. My grip tightened, every instinct demanding I end him, silence his taunts forever. But her voice, her plea, held me frozen. Not because I cared for Matteo's life, because I cared for hers. I turned my head just enough to meet her eyes. She was shaking, but her gaze was steady, burning into me. "If you kill him now, you prove him right," she whispered, voice trembling. "Don't let him make you less than what you are. Don't let him take you from me." For a moment, the world stilled. My blade hovered, my breath harsh in my chest. Matteo's smirk faltered as he realized her words reached me in ways his never could. Slowly, I pulled the blade back, releasing him. He crumpled to the ground, coughing blood, defeated, but alive. My men surged forward to drag him away, to deal with him in quieter, harsher ways. I didn't look at him again. He was already nothing. All my focus was on Alice. I strode toward her, blood staining my shirt, fury still trembling in my veins. She met me halfway down the steps, her hands clutching my arms as though to make sure I was real, alive. Her tears shone in the firelight, her voice breaking. "I thought you would kill him. I thought I'd lose you to the darkness forever." I cupped her face, my thumb brushing her cheek. "I almost did, but you stopped me." Her lips trembled, part sob, part smile. "Maybe you do belong to me after all." I kissed her then, not in anger, not in possession, but in something deeper, something I had never given anyone. The courtyard still burned, the city still bled, but for that moment, nothing else existed. Only us, bound not by forged signatures or stolen vows, but by the truth we could no longer deny. She was mine, and I was hers. And together, we had just survived the fire that threatened to consume us both.
The gardens of the DeSantis estate were quieter than I had ever known them. Summer sunlight spilled across marble statues and roses heavy with bloom, but for once no guards hovered nearby. No enemies lurked beyond the gates. Only peace. Fragile, unexpected peace. I sat beneath the shade of an old cypress tree, my hands folded nervously in my lap. It had been weeks since the night of fire and blood, weeks since Matteo's defeat and the end of the war that nearly tore Naples apart. Life had resumed inside the mansion, but nothing inside me felt the same, because I was not the same. I pressed a hand to my stomach, my breath catching as the truth pulsed through me again. It was early still, but the signs were undeniable. The doctor had confirmed what I already suspected. I carried Vincenzo's child. My throat tightened as I whispered the words aloud, words that sounded both impossible and inevitable. I'm pregnant. 1,000 emotions warred inside me: fear, wonder, disbelief. I thought of the girl I once was, orphaned and invisible, scraping by in a world that never saw me. That girl could never have imagined this moment, sitting in a palace, married to the most feared man in Italy, carrying his heir. And yet, here I was, my fingers curled against the fabric of my dress, over the secret I hadn't told him yet. How could I? Vincenzo, who claimed fearlessness, who killed without hesitation, who had built an empire on blood and fire. Would he see this as weakness, or would it destroy him the way his love for me already had? But when I thought of his arms around me, of the night I had chosen him freely, of the way he had lowered his blade at my word, I knew the truth. He would protect this child with the same fury he protected me. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a pawn in someone else's game. I felt like the beginning of something new. The breeze stirred the roses, their petals scattering like whispers. I closed my eyes, pressing my hand more firmly to my stomach, and allowed myself a small, secret smile. This was no longer just my story. It was ours. Mine, Vincenzo's, and the life growing inside me. And for the first time, I didn't want to run.
Night had settled over the estate, the kind of stillness that once felt unnatural. I had lived too long in chaos to trust quiet. But tonight it felt different. The war was over. Matteo was gone. Caruso broken. Moretti scattered. For the first time in years, my empire stood unchallenged, and yet none of it mattered compared to the woman waiting for me in our chamber. Alice stood by the window, moonlight silvering her hair. She turned when I entered, her eyes uncertain, her hands folded protectively against her stomach. Something in the gesture froze me where I stood. "What is it?" I asked, my voice rougher than I intended. I crossed to her, every step heavy with unease. "What's wrong?" Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Nothing is wrong, but everything is changing." Confusion knifed through me, until I saw the truth in her eyes, until I understood the meaning of her hands pressed against herself. My breath left me in a harsh exhale. "Alice, I'm pregnant," she said softly, the words delicate as glass. "You're going to be a father." For the first time in my life, my knees weakened. I sank down before her, not from defeat, not from exhaustion, but from something far greater: reverence, fear, awe. My hands found her waist, then her stomach, trembling as I pressed my forehead against her. A child, our child, proof that everything I had fought for, bled for, killed for, had meaning, proof that I could create instead of only destroy. "I feared nothing," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Nothing but losing you. And now," my throat tightened as I looked up at her, eyes burning, "now I fear losing both of you. I swear, Alice, I will protect you and this child with everything I am, with every drop of blood in my body." Her fingers slid into my gentle, grounding. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her smile was steady. "I don't need you to be invincible, Vincenzo. I just need you to be here, with me, with us." I rose slowly, pulling her into my arms, holding her as though she were the only anchor in a world built on shifting sand. My lips found hers in a kiss that was not about fire or fury, but about promise, about forever. As the moonlight bathed us, I realized something I had never dared to believe. I was no longer alone. My empire might crumble one day, my enemies might return, but none of it would matter, because I had her, and soon I would hold our child. For the first time in my life, I was not afraid of the future. I was ready to live it.
Thank you for making it to the end. Your presence here means more than you can imagine. You help this channel keep growing. Your interaction is truly important. Every time you give a like, leave a comment, or share a video, YouTube understands that this story deserves to reach more people. And that deeply inspires me to keep writing with soul and dedication. If you enjoy the stories I share here, please leave a like, write a small comment. Even a simple "I'm here" warms my heart. And if you're not yet subscribed, subscribe. It's free. And you can turn on notifications to receive every new story as soon as it arrives. And if it's not too much to ask, share. On your social media, WhatsApp, with a friend who might need to hear something beautiful. Your help makes a difference. Let's spread love stories in a world overflowing with noise and wounds. Maybe, with a small gesture, we can make our planet just a little better. Thank you for being here, and may you always, always feel welcome.